all aspects of neurology, barring few. In a given question, we have to find out the best answer. Some may think it's not correct or it is something different, but I think the best answer will be there. I have tried my best to put it together, but feedback, criticism are always welcome, and all the best for the quiz. We'll start with this is a dummy question so that people can log into Slido and they can just put your name in the Slido and the Slido number which has already been shared with you. So this is a 43-year-old male with complaints of progressive numbness, pain of 1 month duration and weakness in lower extremities. CSF 900 cells, proteins 300, glucose 60. On examination, he has got grade 2 power in the lower limbs. There is atrophy, there is hyporeflexia. The nerve conduction shows the compound muscle action potentials are reduced. Sensory also the snaps are reduced. F wave and H reflex are not elicited. Spinal cord imaging is shown below. The biopsy is also shown below. So this is the MRI.
Dhananjay, you need to tell the Slido code because many people don't have that. Sorry.
Yes, sir. We will. Okay, sir. Fine. I will come to that Slido slide. It will automatically show. Yeah. So this is the biopsy specimen. So here is the codes T660. Okay. So this is the Slido code T660. So I don't see people who have joined still. Okay, now I can see people, 5 people have joined, 10 people. Yeah, I will wait till people join. 26, 33.
You can start with the dummy question.
Yeah, and you can actually put your names also so that I will have names. So what is the diagnosis? Tuberculous arachnoiditis, CMV radiculomyelitis, neurolymphomatosis, none of the above. What is it? Okay, so 54% said tuberculous arachnoiditis, 19. So the correct answer is neurolymphomatosis because we saw the roots were significantly enhancing and the biopsy, the histopathology was showing actually the lymphomatous cells. Anyway, this was a dummy question. Now we start with the quiz basically. So coming to the first question, you have to identify this lesion. I am a professor of anatomical pathology. I observed nystagmus, intention tremor, and telegraphic speech in a scientific way. I studied hysteroepilepsy. Axel Munthe, the story of San Michel, tried to distort my image. So these are the 4 salient features of that lesion. So, okay, I can see 114 people ready. So here is your time. Is it Oliver Sacks? Is it Sigmund Freud? Is it Jan Martin Charcot? Is it Joseph Babinski? Correct. So majority people corrected it, guessed it rightly. It is Jan Martin Charcot. So French, we all know he's a great neurologist, French neurologist, and he was a professor of anatomical pathology. He was first to describe multiple sclerosis, what is known as Charcot triad. Though we know that it is not unique to MS, but he described it in MS patients, and he was first to describe multiple sclerosis. Charcot is best known today for his work on hypnosis and hysteria. In particular, he best remembered for his work with a patient, Louis Augustin Glizes, who increased his fame. Basically, he was famous amongst female. He married a widow. Distorted view of Charcot as harsh and tyrannical have arisen from some sources that rely on a fanciful autobiographical novel by Axel Munthe, The Story of Saint Michel. He actually says that he was Charcot's student, but historically people deny that he was never a Charcot student. So the answer was Jean Martin Charcot. Now, second, again you have to identify this great person. His brilliant academic record led to his selection as registered under most renowned British neurologist of era, Lord Brain, to work at famous National Hospital for Nervous Diseases of the London Hospital. His early publications included spinal meningitis with radiculomyelopathy in Journal of Neurological Sciences. His contributions to world neurology was recognized by World Federation of Neurology, which conferred certificate of appreciation for services to neurology in 1993. He was first recipient of prestigious medal and prize for services to international neurology in 2009. He served initially as a chairman of the governing body and later as president of the Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Sciences, Kerala. So, about whom we are talking. Okay, so ready for the quiz. Is it Dr. K.S. Mani? Is it Dr. Chidambaram? Is it Dr. T.K. Ghosh? Or is it Dr. N.H. Wadia? Okay, so only 36% people have guessed it correctly. It is no one else but Dr. N.H. Wadia. These all things are taken from this obituary, which was written in Indian Academy of Neurology. We all know his work on spinocerebellar ataxia, craniocervical junctions, and his all stories we all know. But he was, but the answer, as I said, the only I think that issue was with the director of Sri Chitra, that must been difficult. But even I came to know after reading this obituary that he was there. He was actually a director there. So, question three: the 2014 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, with one half to John O'Keefe and other half jointly to May-Britt Moser and Edward Moser, was given for their contribution in what field? This is important from neurological point of view. So, ready for the discovery of cells that constitute a positioning system in the brain, discovery of molecular mechanism controlling the circadian rhythm, discovery of the machinery regulating vesicle traffic, a major transport system in our cells, discovery and development of green fluorescent protein, GFP. Yes, correct. 40% people are absolutely bang on. Discovery of cells that constitute a positioning system in the brain, and that too in the hippocampal area basically. So the other people who have received for this is Jeffrey Hall, and all other people have received for discoveries of molecular mechanism controlling the circadian rhythm in 2017. James Rothman and all have received in 2013 for discovery of the machinery regulating vesicle traffic. And Osaku Shimomura and Martin Shalfie Roger for their green fluorescent protein, discovery of green fluorescent protein in 2008. Now we will have a history and you have to diagnose. Just listen to her. Video is not important. So she described that pain which used to occur after 10-15 minutes of walking, and then after stopping she used to get relieved of that headache. So people are ready with the quiz. Quiz is not moving now. Okay, sorry. So what is it? Is it exertional migraine? Is it subarachnoid hemorrhage? Is it cardiac cephalalgia? Or is it tension type headache? Yes, so 64% people are correct. It is cardiac cephalalgia. She actually underwent a stress test She had similar symptoms and positive stress test, which got relieved with NTG, and later on underwent the angioplasty. So correct answer is cardiac cephalalgia. So what is it? It is migraine-like headache, but not always. It is maybe exaggerated by exercise, occurring during an episode of myocardial infarction, and relieved by nitroglycerin. There is a diagnostic criteria for that. We need to demonstrate evidence of myocardial ischemia and onset of the headaches temporarily related with that ischemia, improvement, resolution, or worsening in parallel with improvement, resolution, or worsening of myocardial ischemia. Then at least two of the following four criteria, that is moderate to severe intensity, accompanied by nausea, not accompanied by photophobia or phonophobia, aggravated by exertion, and then relieved by nitroglycerin. This is the criteria for cardiac cephalalgia. Now, question 5. What is the diagnosis? A 47-year-old man with no prior medical history had a motor vehicle accident. He was discharged and promptly returned to work as a building developer. Next day, utilizing a vibrating tool at work following its use, he noticed disrupted vision, which persisted for months. His vision was described as continuous ashes of black and white, which were constant with no variation throughout the day. He soon developed severe muscle pain, irritable bowel syndrome, tinnitus, and lethargy. However, he had no neurological impairments. He underwent multiple ophthalmologic and neurological consultation and investigation, MRI, VP, perimetry, fundoscopy, everything was normal. So his extensive evaluation was normal. So he was labeled as a functional patient. Following few months of investigation and specialist consult, somebody gave him correct diagnosis and started him on treatment. So what is the diagnosis in this patient? Is it redox phenomena? Is it Pulfrich phenomena? Is it malingering? Or is it visual snow syndrome? What is it? Correct. So again, 45% people are correct. It is visual snow syndrome. So this is the criteria which is given for visual snow syndrome. I won't be going in detail, but they have dynamic continuous tiny dots in the entire visual field which last for more than 3 months, presence of additional two visual symptoms like palinopsia, enhanced entopic phenomena, photophobia, or nyctalopia. Their symptoms should not be like migraine with visual aura, and symptoms should not be better explained by any other disorder. Now, what is redox syndrome? Is a statokinetic dissociation. What happens is that visual impairment is often caused by lesions in the occipital lobe, which limits sufferer's ability to distinguish between objects. Only moving objects in blind fields are visible, and static ones are invisible. That is why it is called as statokinetic dissociation. The Pulfrich effect is a psychophysical percept wherein lateral motion of an object in the field of view is interpreted by the visual cortex as having a depth of component due to a relative difference in signal timings between the two eyes. So there is a difference between signal timings. So that is why the movement is perceived as a depth. So that is Pulfrich effect. Now, what is the diagnosis? You see a sign in front of you, and what is this? I'm not asking sign, but what produces it? Okay. So is it a pronator teres syndrome? Is it anterior interosseous neuropathy? Is it deep ulnar branch neuropathy? Or do you think it's upper brachial plexopathy? Yes, majority are correct. It's anterior interosseous neuropathy. It's a okay sign. And if we see in the figure here, the lower hand is normal, the upper hand is abnormal. So that is okay sign. It's typical for anterior interosseous neuropathy. The pinch test exposes the weakness of flexor pollicis longus muscle and flexor digitorum profundus, leading to weakness of the flexion of distal phalanges of the thumb and index finger. So this is a image. This patient has a history of dysphagia. Pictures taken are 4 months apart. What is diagnosis? What you see in the picture on the left hand side, there is a difference in picture on the right hand side, especially on the tongue. Tongue is a hint basically. So in fact, I changed the duration last moment. The authors mentioned, in fact, in just 4 weeks they have demonstrated this. So what is the diagnosis? Is it amyloidosis? Is it amyotrophic lateral sclerosis? Is it inflammatory myopathy or anti-MuSK antibody associated myasthenia? What is it? Again, the majority is right. It is anti-MuSK antibody associated myasthenia. What we saw was tongue atrophy was there, which got recovered following treatment. So this is the difference between acetylcholine. Everybody knows, but just to summarize, in MuSK we have got more bulbar weakness. The neck flexors are involved more than neck extensor. It's mentioned in the article. Muscle wasting is basically facial and tongue muscle wasting. That is a thing which we should remember. So patient with not only tongue wasting and fibrillation have also been mentioned in MuSK positive myasthenia gravis. That is what we should remember. Straight away labeling them as ALS will be a difficult thing. So especially with variation and all those things, we can think of MuSK antibody myasthenia gravis. So this is the original articles where from where I took it. It is from Tough Calls in Neurology by K. Mugundan. And there is another article in JNNP, where they have shown tongue atrophy which gets reversed in anti-MuSK antibody positive myasthenia gravis. They have noticed it over long period. Even literature says that yes, tongue atrophy can reverse over a period when they receive the treatment. So question 8, what will be likely neurological manifestation in this patient? You have to identify what is there, abnormal, and what will be the neurological manifestation in this patient. This is what you have noticed after uncovering the patient. So is it will he manifest with quadriparesis? Will he manifest with painless motor mononeuropathy, status epilepticus, or myopathy? What will be the manifestation? Yes, it is quadriparesis. What is it? It is tick paralysis basically. What we saw was the tick which was there in the on the skin basically. So tick paralysis in humans, it is caused by multiple ticks, but what we commonly see is because of tick Izodes holocyclus. It is commonly reported usually in children, but adults and older people are not completely immune to it. They can develop it. The clinical presentation usually involves a combination of lethargy, weakness, unsteadiness of gait with ataxia, loss of appetite, the dilated pupil, ascending symmetrical paralysis, slurred speech, and depressed tendon reflexes and gag reflexes. What is more important is that absence of sensory symptoms and signs, dilated pupils, and a normal CSF will differentiate it from a GBS. So you will have to identify the wrong answer in the next images. There are images. You have to identify which is the wrong combination or which is a wrong sign here. These are different methods to elicit the planter. First is a Schaefer sign, the figure in 1. Second is a Shaddock sign. Third is a Wing sign. And fourth is the Oppenheimer sign. So which is the wrong one, which is demonstrated here? Okay. So which is the wrong answer? Again, majority is right. It is Bing sign, which is wrong. It is actually Gonda's sign, which is there. So these are all the signs which we do for typical plantar responses. This is the Shaddock sign where we on lateral side with the pointed object we Schaefer sign is where we squeeze hard on the Achilles tendon. Oppenheim sign is where we on the lateral shin we actually uh, we move the thumb. Then Gordon sign is where we squeeze the calf. Bing sign is making multiple tight pinpricks on the dorsolateral surface of the foot. And the Gonda sign is pull the forefoot outward and downward for a brief time and release suddenly. So these are all back to residencies where all were famous for knowing all these signs. Now this is a 36-year-old female who presented with encephalopathy and headaches. She has a past history of hearing impairment and visual symptoms. Resident just saw her past fundus photogram and just jumped to the diagnosis. He did not need anything else basically. So closely at the fundus photograph. So what are we dealing with here? Is it Kearns-Sayre syndrome? It is CMV encephalitis? Is it C-ANCA associated vasculitis or is it a Susak syndrome? Yes, 71% again correct. It is Susak syndrome. What we saw on fundus was branch retinal artery occlusion. She presented with headaches, encephalopathy, past history of visual symptoms as because of BRAO, and she had a deafness also. So everything she had of Susak syndrome. Now find the odd one out in terms of mechanism here, in terms of, okay. So what is odd? Potassium aggravated myotonia, myotonia congenita, hyperkalemic periodic paralysis, paramyotonia congenita. Which is the odd one out here? Yes, it is myotonia congenita because it's a chloride channelopathy. Rest all are sodium channelopathy. So other two sodium channelopathies are hypokalemic periodic paralysis and normokalemic periodic paralysis. So there are five sodium channelopathies. Myotonia congenita is a chloride channelopathy. Now we just discussed this Namchin syndrome. Atri sir showed us one cause for Namchin syndrome, but I want another cause. What is the hematological condition that is associated with Namchin syndrome? We all know malignancy is one, but hematological condition. Is it polycythemia vera? Is it sickle cell anemia? Is it hypereosinophilic syndrome? All of the above or none of the above? Okay, so I think here majority got it wrong. It is sickle cell anemia because of we know there are many crises which occur in sickle cell anemia. This is common usually after the bony pain, the sequestration crisis, where they are prone to develop the neuropathy, and that can produce Namchin syndrome in them. So we saw showed us the odontogenic causes like dental abscess, osteomyelitis. Then there are systemic causes like amyloidosis, sickle cell, syphilis, even described in diabetes, vasculitis, and sarcoidosis. And there are multiple malignancies which are associated with the Namchin syndrome. But remember, Namchin syndrome is not synonymous with the malignancy. There are other causes, local causes and systemic causes are also there. This question number 13. Modified Dandy criteria requires CSF opening pressure in an obese patient to be more than what level basically in lateral decubitus position. Okay, so it is modified Dandy criteria, obese patient and lateral decubitus position. Is it more than 20 centimeter of water? Is it more than 22? Is it more than 25? Is it more than 30? I want a precise level basically. Yes, 60% is correct. It is 25 centimeter of water. For obese patient, it is 25 centimeter of water. And for non-obese patient, it is 20 centimeter of water. So this is a dandy criteria for IIH. Patient should be alert with normal neurological examination except for papilledema, enlarged blind spot, visual field defect, and sixth nerve palsy. Increased CSF pressure more than 200 millimeter or 20 centimeter water in non-obese and 25 centimeter in obese patient. Normal CSF, there may be low CSF protein. There should not be any intracranial diseases like CVT, and then no metabolic, toxic, or hormonal causes of intracranial hypertension for IIH basically. And later on, there is one criteria which has been mentioned is DSA also for dural AV fistula. It has not been added officially, but they are thinking of doing that. 36-year-old male presented with 2 weeks history of headaches, fever, drowsiness, and photophobia. He was previously healthy and was sexually active with men. He was febrile and had neck stiffness. CT of the head was normal. Opening pressure of lumbar puncture was 29 centimeter of water. CSF preparation revealed the following. So this is what you see on the CSF preparation. So what is the diagnosis? Is it cryptococcal meningitis? Is it CNS lymphoma? Is it Kaposi sarcoma with CNS involvement? Or is it meningococcal meningitis? What is it? Yes, it is cryptococcal meningitis. What we saw in gram stain as well as the India ink preparation was a capsulated organism. So India ink, if you see on gram stain, you may have capsulated organism, but there was a second slide which showed India ink preparation. So it is cryptococcal meningitis. So identify the typical VNG tracing in MSA. Those who have been attending fine seminars, this we have seen n number of times this diagram. So which is the one graph which is showing the VNG of multiple system atrophy? Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Or is it D? No, the answer is D. So the A was PSP patient, where we see classical square wave jerks. PD, sort of small. There are square wave jerks, but they are very small. Third is corticobasal syndrome, and fourth is multiple system atrophy. So those who have been seeing will not miss that. So identify this typical histological structure which is shown, which is in the bright structure which you see in the histological slide. What you see? What is it? Is it Samoma body? Is it Homer Wright rosette, Negri body, or a Reed Sternberg cell? What is it? Yes, it is Samoma body. We can see the dystrophic calcification. So it is Samoma body. Samoma body, I already showed it. We can see in papillary carcinoma of thyroid, papillary carcinoma of RCC, serous cystadenoma of ovary, and most importantly in meningiomas. The second slide shows Homer Wright rosette. The third is Negri bodies, which are eosinophilic, sharply outlined pathognomic inclusion bodies, 2 to 10 micrometer in diameter. They are found in the cytoplasm of certain nerve cells, especially in the Ammons horn of the hippocampus. And this is the Reed-Sternberg cell of Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, what is the spontaneous activity that is recorded here? Is it fibrillation potential? Is it myotonia? Is it complex repetitive discharges? Or is it myokymia? Okay, so many people going for CRDs, but the correct answer is myokymia. It is myokymia. It was a demyelinating neuropathy patient, long standing. So these are all the spontaneous activity which we see. End plate spike, remember it, the first is negative, then positive sharp waves, fibrillation potential, these are fasciculation potential, neuromyotonic, and the myokimic discharges. What was the hint was spontaneous. It was I asked spontaneous discharges basically. So myokimic discharge is a spontaneous MUAP firing. It is a repetitive in burst. Each burst has one or more MUAP or MUAP like characteristic. It is a 40 frequency is around 40 to 60 hertz. It is regular semi-rhythmic pattern at interval of around zero point 0.1 to 10 second. And firing pattern is not affected by voluntary contraction. There is typical marching pattern which is there. So this is a subdural EEG recording. Don't be uh, disheartened that it is subdural EEG. It is like a normal EEG. Think like a normal EEG. Just and what is happening is that there are we can see the abnormality when or we can see the thing when he stops moving, the patient stops moving his left arm, and here he starts moving his left arm. So the thought is there. So what is the thing which you are seeing here in on subdural EEG? Is it generalized paroxysmal fast activity? Is it mu rhythm? Is it focal spike? Or is it something else? It's not GPFA or mu rhythm or focal spike. What do you think? Correct. So it is mu rhythm. Even the thought of not moving the arm, which brought on that activity. So it is a mu rhythm. So it's physiological EEG finding of little clinical significance. It's a central rhythm of an alpha frequency band 8 to 10 Hz with archiform configuration, intermix or alternate with beta activity. Occurs in less than 5% of children younger than 4 years of age and around 8 to 20% between the age of 8 and 16 years. Not blocked with eye opening, but blocked by touch, movement of limbs, especially contralateral limbs or thought of movement. This is what exactly happened. The thought of movement blocked it. Usually asymmetric, maybe asynchronous and independent in two hemispheres. Now the second last question, 30-year-old female with skin involvement, and we did a CT scan for neurological manifestation and we found on CT scan this thing. What is the diagnosis? So what is the diagnosis? Is it Far's disease? Is it tuberous sclerosis? Is it pseudo hypoparathyroidism? Or is it lipoid proteinosis? Okay, 43% thought it's tuberous sclerosis. No, the answer is lipoid proteinosis. What we saw on CT scan was characteristic bean-shaped or kidney-shaped calcification. This is a hallmark. What is the hallmark of this condition in skin is moniliform blepharosis, where here on the eyelids you can see like a pearl-like appearance. This is a hallmark of this. And then they have got a skin appearance which is very typical for this condition. Even the tongue, where you see the typical tongue in these patients, and these patients usually have, it's also called as Urbach-Wiethe disease and Hyalinosis cutis. There is a loss of function mutation or reduced expression of the ECM1 gene. Their manifestation, the skin manifestation, are due to deposition of the past positive hyaline material. The hoarseness of voice is another typical manifestation, which is usually since childhood because of involvement of the larynx. The neurological feature, most importantly, are epilepsy and neuropsychiatric symptoms because of temporal involvement. The classic CT finding is bilateral symmetrical horn or bean-shaped calcification of the amygdala of the hippocampal nuclei. Rest of the hippocampus, parahippocampal gyra and striatum can also be involved. So remember this typical bean-shaped or kidney-shaped calcification. Now, last question. A 27-year-old man with rapidly progressive coma, where his CBC is normal, CSF is normal, metabolic parameters, RFTs, LFTs, electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, all is normal. We got his CT done was normal, but got his MRI brain done, and we can see this extensive cytotoxic edema. The hint is classical location which is involved. That is going to give us the hint. So what investigation is going to give us help in terms of etiology? So toxic screen, serum ammonia level, autoimmune encephalitis panel, CSF, HSV PCR. What is going to give us the hint? Okay, 46% opted for toxic screen, but the correct answer is serum ammonia level, because what we saw classically was involvement of the two structures which are there is the cingulate gyrus and the insular cortex, which was involved in this patient. So it was because of the hyperammonemia. This patient had a urea cycle defect, and that is what led to increase in ammonia levels. So yes, we are to the end, and the winner is Dr. Anand Diwan from Nasik. He got 17 out of 21 correct. There is a tie also. There is a Nithu who is equal points, 17 out of 21. That's great, amazing. Then Prachi is on 15 points, Vikram Aglave on 14 points, and Jidin Raj on 13 points. So these are the 5 winners today for us. So the hardest question, what is the hematological condition associated with Namchin syndrome? Okay, we have discussed it many times, sickle cell as a cause. Yes. So thank you very much for the patient listening. I hope I have done justice with the quiz.
It says 21 questions.
Yes, sir.
One question, that first question that you asked was actually a trial question. So
yeah, trial
should
question, but that is in